The morning sun cast long shadows across the military airbase as Sarah Martinez adjusted her safety helmet and checked her equipment one final time. At 26, she had been working as an aircraft maintenance specialist for 3 years, and loading ammunition onto Apache helicopters had become second nature to her. The routine was always the same: arrive at dawn, inspect the weapons systems, and carefully load the precise ordnance required for each mission. Sarah had grown up in a small town in Texas, where her father worked as a mechanic and her mother taught elementary school. From an early age, she showed an aptitude for understanding complex machinery, often helping her father repair cars in their garage. When she turned 18, the military seemed like a natural choice. It offered stability, training, and the opportunity to work with some of the most advanced aircraft in the world. The Apache helicopter before her was a formidable machine, its sleek black frame gleaming under the hangar lights. These attack helicopters were among the most sophisticated weapons systems ever created, capable of carrying Hellfire missiles, rockets, and a 30mm chain gun. Sarah's job was to ensure that every piece of ordnance was loaded correctly, balanced properly, and secured according to strict military protocols. As she began her morning inspection, Sarah noticed that today's aircraft had been assigned to Captain James Rodriguez, a pilot she had seen around the base, but never really spoken to. Rodriguez had a reputation as one of the most skilled helicopter pilots in their squadron, with over 15 years of experience and multiple deployments overseas. He was known for his meticulous attention to detail and his calm demeanor under pressure. The loading process began as usual. Sarah worked methodically, checking each missile mount and ensuring that the helicopter's weight distribution remained within acceptable parameters. The Apache could carry a variety of weapons depending on the mission requirements, and today's loadout suggested a reconnaissance mission with defensive capabilities. She attached the safety cables, verified the electronic connections, and began the careful process of mounting the Hellfire missiles. Working alone in the early morning hours gave Sarah time to think. She often reflected on how different her life had become since joining the military. The discipline, the structure, and the sense of purpose were things she had never experienced in her civilian life. Yet sometimes, in quiet moments like these, she wondered about the weight of what she was doing, loading weapons that could change lives forever. The sound of approaching footsteps broke her concentration. Captain Rodriguez was walking toward the aircraft, his flight suit pristine and his helmet tucked under his arm. He moved with the confident stride of someone who had done this routine thousands of times before. Sarah continued her work, focusing on the delicate task of securing the final missile mount. Rodriguez began his own pre-flight inspection, starting with the aircraft's exterior systems. He checked the rotor blades for any signs of damage, inspected the landing gear, and verified that all external components were properly secured. His inspection routine was thorough and methodical, leaving nothing to chance. The lives of his crew and the success of their mission depended on every detail being perfect. As Sarah worked beneath the aircraft's weapon systems, she was unaware that something about her appearance had caught the pilot's attention. She was dressed in standard military fatigues, her hair pulled back in regulation style, and her focus entirely on the technical aspects of her job. The morning was proceeding exactly as hundreds of others had before. The base around them was coming to life as more personnel arrived for their shifts. Mechanics rolled tool carts across the hangar floor, their conversations echoing off the high metal ceiling. Radio chatter from the control tower provided a constant background hum, coordinating the day's flight operations. Transport vehicles moved between buildings, carrying supplies and equipment to various locations around the facility. Sarah had always prided herself on her professionalism and attention to detail. In her 3 years of service, she had never had a safety incident or failed an inspection. Her supervisors consistently rated her performance as exceptional, and she had recently been recommended for advanced training on newer aircraft systems. The work was demanding and sometimes dangerous, but she found satisfaction in knowing that her expertise contributed to the safety and effectiveness of flight operations. The Apache helicopter represented the pinnacle of military aviation technology. Its twin engines could propel it at speeds exceeding 180 miles per hour, while its advanced targeting systems allowed pilots to engage targets with precision from considerable distances. The aircraft's armor could withstand small arms fire, and its electronic countermeasures provided protection against enemy missiles. Loading weapons onto such a sophisticated machine required extensive training and unwavering attention to safety protocols. As she continued her work, Sarah mentally reviewed the checklist she had memorized months ago. Each step had to be completed in the correct sequence, with multiple verification procedures to ensure nothing was overlooked. The consequences of a mistake could be catastrophic, not only for the aircraft and its crew, but potentially for civilians or friendly forces in the operational area. Captain Rodriguez moved around to inspect the weapon mounts Sarah was working on. He had flown missions in various parts of the world, from desert environments to urban conflict zones. Each mission presented unique challenges, requiring him to adapt his tactics and rely on his training and experience. The trust between pilot and ground crew was absolute. His life depended on the competence and dedication of specialists like Sarah. The morning continued with its familiar rhythm. Other aircraft were being prepared for their missions, with ground crews working efficiently to meet scheduled departure times. The coordination required to operate a military airbase was extraordinary, involving hundreds of personnel working in synchronized precision to ensure mission readiness. Sarah paused for a moment to wipe perspiration from her forehead. The physical demands of her job were considerable, requiring her to lift heavy ordnance and work in awkward positions for extended periods. Her training had prepared her for these challenges, but maintaining focus and energy throughout long shifts required both physical fitness and mental discipline. The weapons she was loading represented months of training and millions of dollars in advanced technology. Each Hellfire missile contained sophisticated guidance systems that could track and engage targets with remarkable accuracy. The responsibility of handling such powerful weapons was something Sarah took seriously, understanding that her work directly impacted the safety of military personnel and the success of their operations. As Captain Rodriguez completed his exterior inspection and moved toward the cockpit area, he began reviewing the mission briefing materials. Today's flight would involve reconnaissance over a remote area where intelligence reports suggested unusual activity. The mission was classified as routine, but Rodriguez knew that situations could change rapidly, requiring immediate adaptation and response. The relationship between pilots and ground crew was built on mutual respect and shared commitment to excellence. Rodriguez had worked with many weapons specialists over his career, and he had learned to appreciate the skill and dedication required to do Sarah's job effectively. The precision required to load weapons systems correctly, combined with the physical demands and safety considerations, made her role both challenging and critically important. Sarah was nearing completion of the loading process when she noticed Captain Rodriguez approaching her work area. She continued with her final checks, ensuring that all safety systems were properly engaged and that the weapons were secured according to specifications. The last step involved verifying the electronic connections that would allow the pilot to control the weapons systems from the cockpit. The morning sun had risen higher, casting different patterns of light and shadow across the hangar floor. The temperature was beginning to climb, and Sarah could feel the warmth building under her work clothes. Despite the physical discomfort, she maintained her focus on the technical requirements of her job, knowing that any distraction could lead to dangerous mistakes. Rodriguez watched Sarah's work with professional interest, noting her methodical approach and attention to detail. He had seen many ground crew members over the years, and he could quickly assess their competence based on how they handled their responsibilities. Sarah's movements were confident and precise, indicating extensive training and experience. The base communications system crackled with updates about weather conditions and flight schedules. Morning briefings were being conducted in various buildings around the facility, with mission commanders updating their teams on objectives, threats, and operational procedures. The complexity of coordinating multiple aircraft operations required constant communication and careful planning. As Sarah bent down to check the final weapon mount, the sleeve of her uniform shifted slightly, revealing a small portion of what appeared to be a tattoo on her upper arm. The marking was barely visible, just a few lines and symbols that could have been decorative artwork or something more significant. In the context of a military base, tattoos were common among personnel, often representing unit affiliations, personal milestones, or artistic expression. Captain Rodriguez, focused on his pre-flight preparations, was scanning the various systems and components of his aircraft when his gaze happened to fall on the partially visible marking on Sarah's arm. What he saw caused him to stop his inspection abruptly, his experienced eyes recognizing something that made his blood run cold. The symbols were not decorative artwork or typical military insignia. They were something far more dangerous and unexpected. Captain Rodriguez felt his heart skip a beat as he processed what he was seeing. The symbols on Sarah's arm were not random decorative elements or typical military tattoos. They were Cyrillic characters combined with specific geometric patterns that he recognized from his intelligence briefings, markings associated with a Russian special operations unit that had been involved in covert activities across multiple conflict zones. His mind raced as he tried to maintain his composure while continuing to observe Sarah's work. Rodriguez had spent 2 years as a military intelligence liaison before returning to flight operations, and during that time, he had studied hundreds of documents about foreign military units and their identification methods. The particular combination of symbols on Sarah's arm matched exactly with intelligence reports about a specialized Russian reconnaissance unit known for infiltrating Allied military installations. Sarah continued her work, completely unaware that her carefully concealed identity had been discovered. She had spent months preparing for this assignment, learning American military procedures, perfecting her English accent, and studying the technical aspects of Apache helicopter systems. Her real name was Svetlana Volkov, and she was a captain in the Russian military intelligence service known as the GRU. The tattoo that had betrayed her identity was something she had received during her graduation from an elite training program in Moscow. It was meant to be a source of pride, a permanent reminder of her selection for the most sensitive and dangerous assignments. However, the intelligence services had failed to consider that such markings could become liabilities during deep cover operations in enemy territory. Rodriguez forced himself to continue his pre-flight inspection while his mind worked frantically to process this discovery. He could not immediately alert security without potentially compromising the safety of other personnel or allowing Sarah to escape. Instead, he needed to carefully observe her actions and determine the extent of the threat she might represent to the base and its operations. The implications of having a Russian spy with access to advanced American military technology were staggering. Sarah had been working with Apache helicopters for 3 years, giving her extensive knowledge of their capabilities, weaknesses, and operational procedures. She had access to classified mission briefings, weapon specifications, and tactical information that could be invaluable to enemy intelligence services. As Rodriguez watched Sarah complete the weapons loading process, he began to notice details about her behavior that he had previously overlooked. Her movements were almost too perfect, following procedures with a precision that suggested extensive study rather than natural familiarity. Her interactions with other personnel were polite, but minimal, avoiding the casual friendships that typically developed among base personnel over time. Sarah performed her final safety checks with characteristic thoroughness, unaware that every movement was being analyzed by the pilot she was preparing to serve. Her training had emphasized the importance of maintaining perfect cover under all circumstances, but she had not anticipated that a single moment of carelessness could expose her true identity to someone with the knowledge to recognize what he was seeing. The base around them continued its normal operations, with personnel going about their duties without any awareness of the drama unfolding in the aircraft hangar. Mechanics worked on other helicopters, administrative staff coordinated mission schedules, and security personnel maintained their regular patrols. The routine nature of military life provided perfect camouflage for both Sarah's covert activities and Rodriguez's growing alarm. Rodriguez knew that he needed to alert base security immediately, but he also recognized the delicate nature of the situation. If Sarah suspected that she had been discovered, she might attempt to sabotage the aircraft or harm other personnel before trying to escape. Alternatively, she might have Confederates on the base who could be warned if her cover was blown prematurely. The weapons that Sarah had just finished loading represented a significant security concern. If she had tampered with any of the systems or installed unauthorized devices, the consequences could be catastrophic. Rodriguez began mentally reviewing every aspect of the loading process he had witnessed, looking for any signs of suspicious activity or deviation from standard procedures. Sarah stepped back from the aircraft and began collecting her tools, signaling that the weapon's loading process was complete. She moved with the confident efficiency that had characterized her performance throughout her assignment, showing no signs of nervousness or awareness that anything was wrong. Her training had taught her to maintain perfect composure under all circumstances, a skill that was now being put to the ultimate test. The morning briefing schedule indicated that Rodriguez's mission was set to begin within the next hour, leaving him very little time to address this security crisis without compromising operational requirements. He faced an impossible choice between alerting security immediately and potentially disrupting critical mission operations or proceeding with the flight while knowing that his aircraft might have been compromised by an enemy agent. Rodriguez's experience in military intelligence had taught him that Russian operatives were typically part of larger networks, rarely working alone on assignments of this magnitude. The possibility that Sarah had accomplices on the base added another layer of complexity to an already dangerous situation. Any action he took could trigger responses from other operatives who might be monitoring the situation. The technical sophistication required to successfully infiltrate American military operations suggested that Sarah's mission was of critical importance to Russian intelligence services. The information she had gathered over 3 years of service could provide unprecedented insights into American military capabilities and operational procedures. The damage to national security could be immeasurable if she had been able to transmit classified information to her handlers. Sarah approached Rodriguez as she completed her equipment checklist, her demeanor professional and courteous. She reported that all weapon systems had been loaded according to specifications and that the aircraft was ready for flight operations. Her English was flawless, with only the slightest trace of an accent that could have been attributed to any number of American regional dialects. As Rodriguez acknowledged her report, he studied her face for any signs that might reveal her true identity or intentions. Sarah met his gaze directly, showing the confidence and competence that had earned her the trust of base personnel over her years of service. There was no indication in her expression or body language that she suspected anything was wrong. The communication systems in the hangar crackled with updates about weather conditions and mission schedules. Other pilots were arriving to begin their own pre-flight preparations, and ground crews were moving efficiently between aircraft to ensure all missions departed on schedule. The normal rhythm of military operations continued around them, providing a surreal backdrop to the life and death drama that was unfolding. Rodriguez realized that he had to make a decision immediately. His mission briefing was scheduled to begin in 30 minutes, and any delay would raise questions that could compromise the investigation into Sarah's activities. He also knew that if Sarah suspected she had been discovered, she might take desperate actions that could endanger the lives of everyone on the base. The weight of responsibility settled on Rodriguez's shoulders as he considered his options. His decision in the next few moments could determine whether a major security breach was contained or whether critical military secrets would be lost to enemy intelligence services. The training and experience that had prepared him for combat situations were now being tested in a completely different, but equally dangerous scenario. Sarah began walking away from the aircraft, heading toward the equipment storage area where she would secure her tools before moving on to her next assignment. Her routine was consistent with her normal procedures, showing no signs of unusual haste or nervousness that might indicate awareness of discovery. She moved with the same calm professionalism that had characterized her performance throughout her time on the base. Rodriguez watched her departure while simultaneously trying to formulate a plan that would minimize the risk to base personnel and preserve the security of ongoing operations. He knew that base security protocols included procedures for dealing with suspected enemy agents, but implementing those procedures in the middle of active flight operations presented unique challenges that had never been fully addressed in training scenarios. The Apache helicopter before him represented millions of dollars in advanced military technology, along with weapon systems that could cause massive destruction if misused. The possibility that Sarah had compromised any aspect of the aircraft's systems added urgency to Rodriguez's need for immediate action. Every minute of delay increased the potential for catastrophic consequences. As Sarah disappeared from view around the corner of the equipment storage building, Rodriguez made his decision. He would immediately contact base security while maintaining the appearance of normal pre-flight operations. The investigation would have to proceed carefully to avoid alerting other potential operatives, but the immediate threat had to be addressed before any missions departed. The discovery of a Russian spy with access to America's most advanced military technology represented a security breach of unprecedented proportions. The full extent of the damage would take months to assess, but Rodriguez knew that his quick recognition of the threat might have prevented an even greater disaster. The morning that had begun as a routine mission preparation had become a critical moment in protecting national security. Rodriguez moved quickly but carefully toward the base communications center, his mind racing with the implications of what he had discovered. Every step felt weighted with the enormous responsibility of protecting his fellow service members and preventing a catastrophic security breach. He could not afford to make any mistakes in how he handled this situation, as the consequences could affect national security for years to come. The communications center was located in a secure building near the center of the base, staffed by personnel with the highest security clearances and access to encrypted channels that could reach intelligence agencies across the government. Rodriguez knew that reporting his discovery would trigger a massive investigation, but he also understood that delay could allow Sarah and any potential accomplices to escape or cause additional damage. As he approached the building, Rodriguez spotted Sarah emerging from the equipment storage area, apparently proceeding with her normal routine. She was walking toward another section of the flight line where additional aircraft were being prepared for morning missions. Her casual demeanor continued to mask what Rodriguez now knew was a carefully maintained false identity that had fooled military security for 3 years. The security officer on duty at the communications center was Sergeant Michael Chun, a veteran with 12 years of military intelligence experience. Rodriguez had worked with Chun on previous classified matters and knew him to be both competent and discreet. Chun noticed the tension in Rodriguez's expression immediately and gestured him toward a private communication booth. Rodriguez quickly but quietly explained what he had observed, describing the specific symbols he had seen on Sarah's tattoo and their significance according to his intelligence training. Chun listened intently, asking precise questions about the location and appearance of the markings. His experience told him that Rodriguez's identification was likely accurate, but the implications were so serious that multiple confirmation procedures would be necessary. Within minutes, Chun had initiated secure communications with both base security headquarters and the Regional Military Intelligence Command. The response was immediate and decisive. Sarah would be placed under discreet surveillance while a full investigation team was assembled. No action would be taken that might alert her to the discovery until a comprehensive plan could be implemented. Meanwhile, Sarah continued her work routine, completely unaware that her 3-year mission was about to come to an abrupt end. She moved between aircraft with the same professional efficiency that had earned her commendations and the trust of her supervisors. Her next assignment involved inspecting weapons systems on another Apache helicopter scheduled for an afternoon training mission. The investigation team that was rapidly being assembled included specialists in counterintelligence, technical security, and behavioral analysis. They would need to determine not only the full extent of Sarah's activities, but also whether other operatives had been placed in similar positions throughout the military. The possibility that this represented part of a larger infiltration effort added urgency to their work. Rodriguez returned to his aircraft to continue mission preparations while maintaining the appearance of normal operations. However, his focus was now divided between his flight responsibilities and concern about the security implications of the weapons systems that Sarah had loaded. He began a more thorough inspection of every component she had touched, looking for signs of tampering or unauthorized modifications. The base security team began implementing surveillance procedures that would track Sarah's movements without alerting her to their presence. Specialized personnel positioned themselves at strategic locations around the flight line, while others monitored communication systems for any signs that she might be attempting to contact outside handlers or accomplices. Sarah's personnel file was immediately pulled for comprehensive review by the investigation team. What they discovered was a masterpiece of identity construction that had successfully passed multiple security screenings over several years. Her background story was supported by documentation that appeared authentic, references that checked out when contacted, and a service record that showed consistent competence and reliability. The sophistication of Sarah's cover identity suggested involvement by the highest levels of Russian intelligence services. Creating and maintaining such an identity required extensive resources, careful planning, and ongoing support that indicated this was not an isolated operation. The investigation team realized they were dealing with a professional spy network of unprecedented capability. As the morning progressed, additional aircraft began departing for their scheduled missions while the investigation proceeded in secret. The base continued its normal operations, but an undercurrent of tension was building among the security personnel who were aware of the situation. Every action had to appear routine while a massive counterintelligence operation was being coordinated. Rodriguez completed his pre-flight inspection with exceptional thoroughness, documenting every detail of the weapons systems and looking for any anomalies that might indicate tampering. The electronic systems appeared to be functioning normally, but he knew that sophisticated sabotage might not be immediately detectable through standard inspection procedures. The investigation team established a command center in a secure facility away from the main base operations, where they could coordinate their activities without attracting attention. Communication protocols were implemented to ensure that information about the investigation remained compartmentalized among only those personnel who absolutely needed to know about the situation. Sarah's movements were now being tracked by multiple surveillance teams using both visual observation and electronic monitoring. Every person she interacted with was being identified and assessed for potential involvement in her operation. The investigation was expanding rapidly as the full scope of the potential security breach became apparent. Technical specialists began analyzing the aircraft systems that Sarah had worked on over the previous weeks, looking for signs of unauthorized access or modification. They were particularly concerned about the possibility that she had installed surveillance devices or sabotage mechanisms that could be remotely activated during critical missions. The psychological profile being developed for Sarah suggested someone with exceptional training in maintaining false identities under extreme pressure. Her ability to successfully integrate into military culture and maintain her cover for 3 years indicated professional preparation that went far beyond typical intelligence training. She was clearly a highly skilled operative with years of specialized preparation. Rodriguez's mission briefing was postponed as investigators worked to determine whether it was safe for him to proceed with flight operations using an aircraft that had been prepared by a suspected enemy agent. The potential for catastrophic sabotage meant that every system would need to be thoroughly inspected before the helicopter could be cleared for flight. The investigation team contacted technical experts at defense contractors who manufactured the Apache helicopter systems, requesting immediate assistance in detecting any unauthorized modifications or surveillance devices. These specialists began traveling to the base to conduct detailed inspections using equipment not normally available to military maintenance personnel. Sarah completed her work on the second aircraft and proceeded to her scheduled break, stopping at the base cafeteria for coffee and a light meal. Her routine remained completely normal, showing no signs of nervousness or awareness that she was being watched by multiple surveillance teams. Her training in maintaining operational security appeared to be exceptional. The cafeteria surveillance revealed that Sarah chose a table that provided clear views of multiple exits and positioned herself so that she could observe other personnel without appearing to do so. These subtle behavioral patterns were consistent with advanced intelligence training and further confirmed that Rodriguez's identification had been accurate. Communication intercepts were being analyzed to determine whether Sarah had been transmitting information to external contacts. Her personal communication devices were being monitored, and technical specialists were examining base communication systems for signs of unauthorized access or data transmission. The investigation was becoming more complex as additional security concerns were identified. The base commander was briefed on the situation and immediately authorized whatever resources were necessary to contain the threat and assess the damage. The implications for ongoing operations and future security protocols were enormous, requiring coordination with the highest levels of military and intelligence leadership. Rodriguez waited in the mission briefing room while investigators worked to determine whether his flight could proceed safely. Other pilots in his squadron were beginning to notice the delays and unusual activity, but security protocols prevented anyone from explaining the true nature of the situation. The tension was becoming increasingly difficult to conceal. Sarah finished her break and returned to duty, receiving her next assignment from the duty supervisor. She was directed to assist with pre-flight preparations for an evening mission involving multiple aircraft. Her access to classified mission information continued, even as investigators worked frantically to determine the full extent of her intelligence-gathering activities. The investigation had reached a critical point where action would need to be taken soon to prevent further security breaches. However, the complexity of the situation and the need to identify potential accomplices meant that timing would be crucial to the success of the operation. Every decision carried enormous consequences for both immediate security and long-term counterintelligence efforts. As afternoon approached, Sarah continued her duties while surveillance teams maintained constant observation. The investigation had expanded to include review of hundreds of hours of security footage, analysis of maintenance records for dozens of aircraft, and background checks on every person who had worked closely with her over 3 years of service. The scope of the potential compromise was becoming clearer with each passing hour. The investigation team made their decision as the afternoon sun cast long shadows across the military base. After hours of careful analysis and coordination with multiple intelligence agencies, they determined that immediate action was necessary to prevent Sarah from potentially destroying evidence or communicating with her handlers about the compromised operation. The arrest would need to be executed with precision to ensure the safety of all personnel and preserve the integrity of the ongoing investigation. Captain Rodriguez received clearance to proceed with a modified version of his original mission, but using a different aircraft that had been thoroughly inspected by technical specialists. The Apache helicopter that Sarah had worked on that morning would remain grounded pending extensive analysis by experts from multiple government agencies. Every component she had touched would be examined for signs of tampering or surveillance devices. The arrest operation was planned to occur during the shift change when personnel movements around the base would provide natural cover for the additional security activity. Sarah would be taken into custody by a specialized counterintelligence team while she was isolated from other personnel, minimizing the risk of resistance or attempts to signal potential accomplices. Sarah was working in a maintenance hangar when the arrest team approached. She was bent over an equipment checklist, apparently focused on routine administrative tasks, when several agents in civilian clothing surrounded her position. Her training had prepared her for the possibility of discovery, but the sudden appearance of professional investigators still caught her off guard. The team leader identified himself and informed Sarah that she was being detained for questioning regarding security matters. Her initial response was to maintain her cover identity, expressing confusion and asking what the problem might be. However, when the team leader specifically mentioned the Russian military symbols tattooed on her arm, her expression changed dramatically. For the first time in 3 years, Sarah's carefully maintained facade cracked slightly. The realization that her identity had been discovered led to a moment of genuine surprise that trained observers immediately recognized. However, she quickly recovered her composure and invoked her right to remain silent, indicating that her preparation had included training for capture scenarios. The search of Sarah's personal quarters revealed a sophisticated communication system hidden within apparently normal personal items. Technical analysis would later determine that she had been regularly transmitting detailed information about aircraft capabilities, mission schedules, and personnel assignments to handlers located outside the United States. The intelligence value of what she had gathered was estimated to be enormous. Rodriguez watched from a distance as Sarah was escorted to a secure facility for interrogation. He felt a complex mix of emotions: relief that the threat had been neutralized, concern about the damage that might have already been done, and professional satisfaction that his quick recognition had prevented potentially greater harm to national security. The investigation expanded rapidly as forensic specialists began analyzing every piece of information that Sarah had accessed during her 3 years of service. Computer records showed that she had viewed thousands of classified documents, attended hundreds of briefings, and had access to technical specifications for America's most advanced military aircraft. The counterintelligence implications would take years to fully assess. Additional arrests were made over the following weeks as the investigation identified a network of Russian operatives who had been placed in various positions throughout the military and defense industries. Sarah's capture had provided investigators with leads that ultimately dismantled one of the most successful foreign intelligence operations ever discovered on American soil. The technical analysis of the Apache helicopter revealed that Sarah had indeed installed several sophisticated surveillance devices within the aircraft's electronic systems. These devices were capable of recording flight data, communication intercepts, and tactical information that could have provided Russian intelligence with unprecedented insights into American military capabilities and procedures. Sarah's interrogation revealed the extent of her training and the resources that had been devoted to her mission. She had spent 2 years in specialized schools in Russia, learning not only military technical skills, but also American culture, regional dialects, and the subtle behavioral patterns that would allow her to blend seamlessly into military society. The false identity that had protected her for 3 years was gradually deconstructed by investigators who traced every document, reference, and piece of biographical information back to their sources. The sophistication of the operation required coordination between multiple Russian intelligence agencies and represented an investment of resources that indicated the critical importance they placed on gathering American military secrets. Rodriguez's role in discovering Sarah's true identity earned him recognition from the highest levels of military and intelligence leadership. However, the classified nature of the operation meant that his contribution could never be publicly acknowledged. The citation in his personnel file simply noted exceptional performance of duty without specifying the nature of his actions. The security protocols for military installations were completely overhauled in response to the investigation findings. New procedures were implemented for background checks, ongoing monitoring of personnel with access to classified information, and technical security measures to detect unauthorized surveillance devices. The lessons learned from Sarah's operation influenced military security practices for decades. Sarah was eventually convicted on multiple charges related to espionage and sentenced to life imprisonment without possibility of parole. During her trial, prosecutors presented evidence that her intelligence gathering had potentially compromised dozens of military operations and endangered the lives of American service members around the world. The broader investigation revealed that similar operations had been attempted at other military installations, with varying degrees of success. The discovery of Sarah's network led to enhanced cooperation between American intelligence agencies and their allies in identifying and neutralizing foreign intelligence operations targeting military and defense facilities. Rodriguez continued his military career with a heightened awareness of security threats and a deeper appreciation for the constant vigilance required to protect national security. His experience became part of training programs designed to help military personnel recognize signs of potential infiltration and respond appropriately to suspicious activities. The Apache helicopter program implemented additional security measures to protect against future infiltration attempts. Technical specifications were compartmentalized more strictly, access to aircraft systems was more carefully controlled, and new monitoring systems were installed to detect unauthorized modifications or surveillance devices. Years later, the investigation files revealed that Sarah's operation had been planned for over a decade before her placement at the military base. Russian intelligence services had identified the Apache helicopter program as a high-priority target and had devoted enormous resources to developing the capability to gather information about America's most advanced military aircraft. The counterintelligence lessons learned from Sarah's case influenced security practices throughout the defense industry. Contractors working on classified projects implemented enhanced personnel screening procedures and ongoing monitoring systems designed to detect potential foreign operatives before they could access sensitive information. The psychological analysis of Sarah's case provided insights into the methods used by foreign intelligence services to prepare operatives for long-term infiltration missions. Her training had included not only technical skills, but also psychological conditioning designed to help her maintain false identities under extreme pressure for extended periods. Rodriguez often reflected on the moment when he first noticed the tattoo that revealed Sarah's true identity. The randomness of the discovery, a simple shift in fabric that exposed markings she had kept hidden for 3 years, demonstrated how even the most sophisticated intelligence operations could be undone by seemingly insignificant details. The base where these events occurred eventually became a model for military security practices, with enhanced procedures that balanced operational effectiveness with protection against infiltration. The lessons learned from Sarah's operation continued to influence military security protocols decades later, serving as a constant reminder of the ongoing threats faced by American military installations. The story of Sarah's discovery and capture remained classified for many years, known only to the personnel directly involved and the intelligence agencies that conducted the investigation. When portions of the case were eventually declassified, it served as a dramatic illustration of the constant vigilance required to protect national security in an era of sophisticated foreign intelligence operations. Captain Rodriguez's quick thinking and recognition of the threat represented exactly the kind of alertness and professionalism that military training sought to develop in all personnel. His actions demonstrated that national security often depended on the competence and dedication of individual service members who remained vigilant even during routine operations. The Apache helicopter that Sarah had worked on was eventually returned to service after extensive modification and testing, but it became part of a special program designed to test new security measures and detection systems. The aircraft served as a reminder that protecting America's most advanced military technology required constant adaptation to meet evolving threats from sophisticated adversaries.